The term grime renaissance first appeared in print in the mid-2010s, referring to a sudden widespread recognition of the UK music genre known as grime. As there's a burgeoning body of literature that defines and outlines grime from its earliest years, this paper focuses on contemporary perceptions of grime. This label, Grime Renaissance, is principally drawn from Dan Hancock's critically acclaimed Inner City Pressure. The term essentially indicates the recent emergence of the genre in mainstream channels of cultural communication. It's been well argued that grime was, until very recently, entirely excluded from mainstream media. Dan Hancock's and Justin Williams, in the introduction to his forthcoming book Britpop, have identified the pivotal moment of grime's rebirth as Kanye West's performance at the 2015 Brit Awards, which directed global attention at artists in the UK grime scene who appeared with him on stage. This helped propel grime into mainstream popular culture and a site of some prestige. Another key moment for the grime renaissance. In 2018, the godfather of grime, Wiley, accepted an MBE, an act which would seem to mark the death knell of any radical promise the music once held, what with the award's associations with traditional imperialist values. So there is a culturally significant period for grime here, marked between 2015 and 2018, during which contested notions of grime entered the mainstream cultural milieu. In 2018, Orlando Woods wrote, "Grime has become an avatar for urban life in the UK." And Jessica Pereira pointed out that grime is now an umbrella term for various genres of Black British music, replacing the label urban. Frustration about terminology is expressed in a telling post by a moderator of the R-Grime subreddit community, who states, "This is R-Grime, not R-UK music, but wait, it's made by a black person." This post was prompted by the release of Dave's 2019 album Psychodrama, which I believe Lewis Kennedy is discussing in this IASPM session. Evidently, inclusion of an artist like Dave had strained the boundaries of grime to breaking point, and the moderators of this community felt compelled to defend their conception of grime. So I'll first argue that grime has become overstretched as a term, and refers to different periods of different forms of creativity. Much of the conflict that currently emerges around the term, who is entitled to it, and where it can be appropriately applied, is due to this ambiguity. Grime is best thought of in two different waves, or periods, or generations. The first wave can be identified where grime stands out as a distinct form of music from sound system culture, reggae, jungle, and fast talking, approximately in the early 2000s. This music culture expressed an intense localism as a consequence of the communications technology available at the time. The first wave of grime is associated with the practices of pirate radio transmission, clashing and ciphers, informal street economies of CD and mixtape distribution, as well as grime nights in venues that also hosted garage raves. Through these cultural priorities, emerging from specific pockets of East London, especially Bow, the first wave of grime participated in intense localization and a very strong sense of attachment and belonging to the local. The nascent genre grew during the 2000s, but its development was quickly restricted due to sanctions from authority institutions, most famously Form 696, the Metropolitan Police's risk assessment for music events. Jonathan Illan notes that the first wave of grime occupied a space tantalizingly close to commercial success, then blocked by the reaction of industry and policing agencies to the music's road aesthetic. The genre thus became marginalized as the 2000s proceeded. Marginalized, but far from extinct. A hidden economy of grime continued in the meantime. It essentially remained underground, disseminated and consumed through mixtapes, pirate radio, and file sharing, especially on mobile phones. Grime began to re-enter the public sphere in the early to mid-2010s. Woods attributes this change almost solely to the liberating effects of digital technologies upon everyday cultural life. It has become a truism to state that digital technologies have democratized cultural creation and consumption. Nonetheless, there is convincing evidence that, freed from the institutional gatekeeping of digital television and internet radio broadcast, and especially due to the widespread ownership of mobile phones and later smartphones, digital technologies have empowered grime artists to overcome the exclusory practices furthered by existing hierarchies of power. So we can see how a grassroots genre like grime, with its multi-mediated and multimodal forms of participation, grew significantly as a result of fora like YouTube. We can demarcate the second wave of grime starting in the early to mid-2010s. In 2014, grime gained its first viral videos in the form of German Whip and Skepta's That's Not Me. A year later, Stormzy's car park performance of Shut Up solidified this fresh face of grime. There's an important generational and aesthetic relationship at play here, which is worth brief analysis. For one, the Shut Up instrumental is, of course, a distinctly first-wave grime track, Rough Squad's Functions on the Low, produced by Ecstasy in 2004. Stormzy has drawn attention to the generational grime lineage, situating himself firmly within earlier traditions. Of grime's elder statesmen, Stormzy commented, "I think sometimes they didn't realise that, the grime scene. Our generation didn't listen to US hip-hop. We listened to you lot." However, figures in the original grime scene, those active before its marginalisation in the later 2000s, are representing a very different politics of responsibility 10 years on. By 2012, Dizzy Rascal is described as from the ends, but no longer of them. Wiley soon becomes the godfather and is awarded his MBE. By contrast, Stormzy's success is predicated on his visual situatedness within his ends throughout his early work. This intense localization is brought to the fore through a confrontational line like, "Where do you know me from?" This divergence has led Spencer Swain to suggest that the grime scene is split irreparably between those artists who adopt a street or badman style built around illicit behaviour and a respectable trope that encourages listeners to better themselves and think about others in their community. Online commentary usefully exemplifies contemporary perceptions of grime and its evolving politics. In 2017, user 10bands wrote, "When will the time come that people admit grime just isn't the same as it used to be? The whole street element, which made it what it was, is dead. It's turning into a commercial joke." Uncle Grime 2, a telling username if ever there was one, agrees with this narrative. Music has changed. The scene is split up. Yes, UK rap is what the street sound is now. In October 2019, an individual wrote that grime's not road anymore. Grime got on uni kids' radars and made it kinda cringe and less road. Then drill has come filled that void of roadman music. Indeed, as grime began its resurgence and transformation into a mainstream genre of commercial popular music, young British artists were drawing inspiration from the viral success of the Chicago drill scene. First-wave grime artists adopted a strategy to succeed within the mainstream industry, which, as opposed to US rappers, involves muting their links to street culture. There's evidently no such dissociation made in modern UK road rap, for which participants and journalists have settled on the label drill. In many ways, drill supersedes grime as the perceived authentic black diasporic music emerging from marginalised London communities. A discourse of digitally mediated badness, street style or simply road, has been firmly tied to drill from the outset. As Woods points out, the mainstream media have adopted the themes of drugs, gangs, knife crime, delinquent hooded youths to portray sensationalist representations of urban Britain to scandalised mainstream audiences. A moral panic known as the knife crime epidemic is ensuing, tied to reported rises in assault and murder cases within London neighbourhoods. The fierce localism espoused by the music has been conflated with class-based and racially charged narratives about criminality, violence, and the city. Such beliefs are confirmed online. This is the reason why UK drill/trap is taking over, because it almost comes across as more real. Grime is just becoming a laughingstock with a limited lifeline in my eyes. The same increase in affordability of digital technologies and access to recording equipment that enabled the mainstream visibility of grime also afford creative expression relating to road rap and drill, genres that, by virtue of their willingness to adopt images of violence and criminality, appear as more authentic alternative forms of music. New media platforms actively encourage transgressive cultural forms and exploit their potential to incite engagement and reaction from a variety of social actors. Drill much more ambiguously aestheticizes criminality than grime, but such nuances not typically recognised by the British media, government or metropolitan police. The dominant narrative instead aligns with the trope of the socially immoral black male, historically identified by Stuart Hall and others. It's evident that many young people, as well as the wider society, have internalised the media representations of dangerous black youth, that drill plays so potently to its viral advantage. Importantly, this is also an international stereotype, drawing upon a mythologized figure that spans the Black Atlantic, the bad man or rude boy. In an important article on the policing of drill, Lambros Fatsis points out that, much like the first wave of grime a decade earlier, restrictions and sanctions are made as an expression of the discriminatory politics that neoliberal economics facilitates in order to exclude those who the state deems undesirable or undeserving of its protection. There are clear parallels to be seen with the treatment of rap in the US. Compare this to an extract of Trisha Rose's landmark study. The terms of the assault on rap music are part of a long-standing sociologically based discourse that considers black influences a cultural threat to American society. Consequently, rappers, their fans, and black youths in general are constructed as co-conspirators in the spread of black cultural influence. Rap fans are the youngest representatives of a black presence whose cultural difference is perceived as an internal threat to America's cultural development. They victimize us. The discriminatory policing of grime and drill follow in a long line of established strategies to criminalize black youth on both sides of the Atlantic and worldwide. It's much more reasonable to view grime and drill as chronicles of the violence and disorder that young black rappers suffer from rather than cause in the spatial and social milieus they inhabit. And obviously the British media is sensitive to this. Drill, the demonic music linked to a rise in youth murders. The rapper's track that sparked a wave of killings. Knife crime epidemic will not end until weapons on streets are no longer cool. Grime music linked to knife crime rise. Police targeting drill music videos in controversial crackdown on social media that incites violence. My exasperation here in no way means to make fun of the victims of tragic events, but as a sardonic critique of a partisan media that supports the government's incrimination of those who their austerity politics harm most. But if we put to one side the state-enacted injustices, one corollary of the conflation between contemporary British rap genres and crime has been international, and to some extent viral, attention. I'm focused primarily on the US response to the grime renaissance and the related surge in UK drill, partially due to the shared histories of hip-hop that inform the genres, as well as cultural experience based in Gilroy's work on the Black Atlantic, and partly due to the predominance of the US hip-hop market in the global popular music economy. While grime has been growing and is now at least part of the UK's national conversation, the US has exported rap as perhaps the most popular form of mainstream contemporary music internationally. In 2018, at least 1 in every 3 streams on on-demand music platforms was associated with the R&B hip-hop genres. And the major artists on streaming services show a clear lead for North American rappers. Grime therefore sits in the shadow of American rap. This is a perennial issue. Grime, like other local and black diasporic musical forms, has had to struggle against being portrayed as a weaker, inferior version of a dominant cultural form from elsewhere. And grime's difference from US traditions has been a mainstay of discourse on the genre since its earliest days. In 2004, Casper Melville wrote, "Grime resignifies hip-hop not as the consumerist bling-bling soundtrack to upward mobility, but as the cri de coeur of the dispossessed, the narrative form of urban life. The tropes of street culture embodied in contemporary UK music are highly attractive to international audiences and received as more authentic accounts of urban British life." Swain makes an important point in describing perceptions of inner-city neighbourhoods as feral no-go areas, constructing dominant images of such localities as bastions of transgressive behaviour. These feelings, communicated through evocative lyrics about the ghetto or hood, enhance this sense of meaning, value and identity. There's a clear connection to be made here to Project Housing as one of the paradigmatic staging grounds of US hip-hop, especially gangster rap and trap. However, American rap's more recent obsession with excess and conspicuous consumption align with more generalized indicators of popular music and celebrity stardom. The performative emphasis on accrued wealth loses some of the grit, some of the grime. And so music that reclaims the logic of road has become more enticing for global listeners. The US audience, increasingly dismissive of North American rap's increasing emphasis on excess and substance abuse, rediscover familiar tropes in 2010's grime and drill. Aspiration, the performance of criminality focused on violence and drug dealing, the masculinist hardness of the bad man or rude boy figure, postcode and turf wars, and broader gang warfare detailing stories of urban conflict. The London scene itself becomes an exotic staging ground on which to reclaim forms of hip-hop authenticity. As Lee Barron puts it, emerging from within local social contexts, grime articulates and represents urban worlds that are invariably and culturally unseen spaces. This international interest demonstrates the strength of Monique Child's argument that, although grime originated as a predominantly black British musical form, it has an appeal to young people irrespective of race or ethnicity, because of the connections it makes to working class experience more generally, and its inclusion of British cultural references. It's not only British culture now, but global audiences that connect meaningfully with the cultural conditions of marginalisation and discrimination, especially racialised policing, responses to poverty, and the necessity of hustling and violent self-defence as means for survival. Richard Bramwell and James Butterworth adopt the term translocality as a tool to examine how place-based identities are performed in particular locations, how these performances are circulated, and how they are informed by performances in other localities. This theoretical frame avoids the shortcomings of dominant discourses of national belonging to young people's lived experiences. This emphasis is especially important in the internet age, informed as it is by the permeation of new media platforms and digital social communication throughout everyday life. The intense localism of the music, with its exoticized representations of black British identity, become translocalized along the flows of the internet. This affords a sense of a single UK grime, drill, rap culture as perceived by global and translocal audiences. Thus it appears, although it may be far from accurate at the street level, that there is one big thing coming out of London, hence grime and its neighbouring genres being dubbed as the next British invasion. And all of this informs the Stormzy lyric used as the title of this paper. This is London City, we the hottest in the world. Not only is this an attractive image for UK artists to endorse, but now manifests across online discourse. One top-rated YouTube comment simply states, "The UK are carrying the rap scene, don't even lie." Similarly, another forum poster writes, "Grime for me is like the spirit of the UK. It's a UK thing, although now it's getting worldwide." In essence, what emerges from the grime renaissance is a re-articulation of hip-hop's own trajectory. A music forged in intensely local experiences and cultural conditions, especially social constraints, and thereafter translocalized to the benefit of audiences all over the world. In this instance, the rate of its spread has been magnified by particular enabling effects of digital communication technologies. Such expansion raises a number of new questions that invite consideration. Various actors are concerned about the preservation of grime as it transforms into an internationally known form in the vein of hip-hop. What might be gained and lost through such viral exportation and global participation? It's important also to consider the emphasis of North American involvement in grime, especially since much of its current popularity stems from instances like the Kanye West Brits performance and Drake's involvement with Boy Better Know, as well as his recent pastiche of UK drill, War. So it may be more accurate to think not of a grime renaissance, but of a London rap naissance, that is, a scene born of international imagination that spans the complex and contradictory politics of aspiration, survival, and black diasporic responses to marginalisation. I'll close by quoting Griff Rolifson's writing on the politics of postcoloniality, as it's clear that the attraction of international audiences to grime and UK drill take the form of cultural and aesthetic modes of political solidarity, constructed not only from shared political and economic interests, but through a culture of opposition and moral authority expressed in verse, song, and style.